Now, America wins the wars that she undertakes, make no mistake about it. And we have declared war on ignorance and illiteracy. We have declared war on poverty. We have declared war on disease. And we have declared war on tyranny and aggression. And we not only stand for these things, but we're willing to stand up and die for these things.
American soldiers in Vietnam. Nearly 60,000 died for their country in a 10-year crusade against communism halfway around the world. Millions more live to fight their loss back home.
Where have you been, my blue-eyed son? And where have you been, my darling young one?
Soviet soldiers in Afghanistan. An estimated 15,000 are killed close to home, performing their international duty in a 9-year war against rebels. Thousands more will live to manage a mistake. Vietnam and Afghanistan. Cold wars for the United States and the Soviet Union. Russian arms in the hands of Vietnamese used to kill Yankee spirits and wound American pride. American arms backing the Afghan rebels used to slay children of the motherland and sap Soviet strength. And arms once used for battle be open to alternatives to Cold Wars like Vietnam and Afghanistan.
Dobro Utro. Hello, I'm King Harris, speaking to you from the heart of the Soviet Union. This is Red Square, the Kremlin, in Moscow. Millions of Soviet soldiers have died defending this incredible fortress, but the dying isn't over. The Soviet struggle in Afghanistan has cost thousands of lives, and soldiers returning from that war, Afghanistan, don't know why. Neither do the mothers and fathers who've lost their sons in the heat of battle. It's a question certainly not new to Vietnam veterans, perhaps a reason why Vietnam vets, including myself, have traveled to this great country to help the Afghanistan, to share our experiences, to help them deal with their pain and their loss, to help them learn how to live again. What we've discovered in this trip is that it's our pain and it's our loss, and all of us must learn how to live again.
20 years after their war, 20 Vietnam veterans marched off once again on a mission of peace and friendship, or as we would soon repeat in Russian, Mir et Druzhba. This exchange of language and life was conceived by the Earth Stewards Network, a citizen diplomacy group which brings people together. People like Jack Lyon.
Well, I see the opportunity here as one to deal on an individual basis with a human being. I think it's real hard to change a society, but I think you can have an impact on an individual.
Our impact was indeed felt in the southern city of Alma-Ata, where we were greeted by what seemed to be a platoon of Afghanistan.
Very happy to see you too, yes.
It was here, on Soviet soil, that we would find ourselves and each other on common ground.
What I hope I'm able to do is not go in with a whole lot of expectations or canned moves, but just let it happen and try as hard as I can to go with the heart.
At first, our meeting did not need much translation.
My name is Sergey.
Hey! Despite translation, our purpose needed no interpretation, as Victor spoke to Peter and welcomed us home to Alma-Ata.
We want you not only to get to know each one of us, to get to know our goals, our problems that we're working on now. Because we have our own problems, like you do. The kind of problems you had when you came from Vietnam. We had problems when we came from Afghanistan, the same problems.
Don't worry about me, Mother. I'm still in this world, sings Fyodor. Fyodor's refrain is familiar to combat vets like Jack Lyon, who served as an officer in the U.S. Marines. Lyon lived through death near Da Nang and Phu Bai and survived several battles back home. So did Greg Burham, who came here from Missoula, Montana. Greg was a Navy SEAL, trained to disrupt and destroy the Viet Cong near V Ton in South Vietnam. By revealing his old wounds, he hopes to heal new ones.
And to take that kind of a risk with people brings us closer together.
And I did not tell this story to anybody for many, many years.
The experience and enlightenment of our exchanges took form in the shape of large groups, where we learned our wars may not have been quite the same, but our wounds were.
The important thing is, even if some of these problems start to develop,
И вот если даже некоторые из этих проблем появляются и начинают развиваться,
if you have friends that you can talk with about that,
друзья, с которыми вы можете поговорить,
and everybody says, yeah, gee, I felt that way too,
и друг твой говорит, да, я тоже это пережил,
then it passes,
тогда это проходит.
and it's not a problem.
И тогда это уже не проблема.
More intimate encounters proved to the Americans that Afghansti, like Baikal Hamzin and Yura Habalan, were soldiers with similar stories.
There are many guys who participated in combat operations.
Особенно те первые 2 года, они очень сильно хотели снова попасть. Это лично даже со мной.
Wanted to get back to battles again and again. This happened to me too later when I was here already, because I had a strong desire to go back there, because I thought it would have been easier for me there.
Baikal often endures recurring nightmares of blood on his hands. Yura lost part of his foot in Afghanistan. Both were wounded in more ways than one.
I suffered.
Ни у кого из тех, кого я вижу, ничего общего, ничего близкого.
I couldn't find anything in common with the people who were around me.
Не по духу.
Common in spirit.
Некому было высказаться, некому было понять меня.
I didn't have anyone to confide in.
Все могли только пожалеть.
People could only feel sorry for me.
А это самое страшное. Вот именно это.
And this is the most terrible thing.
Именно это толкает человека на
This drives people to drinking, to drugs, to suicide. Only this.
I used to feel this.
Я тоже испытывала это.
I used to, when I was in just exactly in that state of mind that he just described,
У меня было такое же состояние.
I would cry out, why couldn't I have died
Почему я не умер?
in Vietnam a glorious death
Почему я не умер героической смертью?
instead of coming back here and living like this?
Вернуться сюда и жить вот такой жизнью.
I know that feeling exactly.
Да, я знаю это чувство.
Sergei Kondratiev experienced that same feeling when he returned home after fighting for 2 years in Afghanistan. Sergei told me he felt bitter about the war and that people back home in Alma-Ata did not understand what he and his comrades had to go through.
Когда я вернулся оттуда, мне было очень тяжело.
So right after I got back home, it was very hard for me, extremely hard for me to readjust, because I can't help feeling tense and nervous, and I couldn't believe that no one's going to shoot at me here.
Sergei himself was shot and wounded twice. He lived through 4 heavy shellings and feels very lucky he survived. He also feels very guilty.
С одной стороны, да.
I very often have this kind of feeling, and especially when you come and see mothers of those or of your friends who got killed in Afghanistan, because it's not that you betrayed your friends and it's not that you left them in difficult circumstances, but it's just that looking in their eyes, you feel guilty that you survived and they were killed. And so what we try to do, we try not to visit those mothers very often because we don't really want to hurt them.
Zinaida Chivilyova was hurt and angry that her son Olejik had to die in Afghanistan. "Nobody asked me or my son if he wanted to fight," she shouted. Other mothers who lost their sons to the war understood Zinaida's pain. They had gathered outside this Russian Orthodox church for a special service. Was a solemn sermon offered by priests who have blessed and baptized these babushkas for many springs. It is a traditional ceremony for the wives and widows who have weathered the long winters of the Great Patriotic War. Now a new winter and a new war brings the younger mothers of Afghanistan together to pray for their sons who died serving their international duty. How many more seasons will pass, and how many more hymns will be sung for the sons of Vietnam and Afghanistan? Only the mothers know. This is Central Asia. Deep inside this vast territory of the Soviet Union, high in the Tanshan Mountains that separate Russia and China, lies the city of Alma-Ata. Alma-Ata is the capital of Kazakhstan, a remote republic populated mostly by Russians and Kazakhs. Ukrainians and Tartars also live here, in an area once glorified by the flowering of Islam and the power of Genghis Khan. A strong European influence has since melded these many ethnic cultures into their present Soviet state and has rushed this city of several million people into the 20th century. Large textile mills and huge power plants that years ago generated growth now pollute the mountain air of the lowlands. But the people of Alma-Ata know how to survive progress, as they do the severity of their winters. They know that spring will eventually blossom and that the fields and orchards will produce the harvest that finds its way to the marketplace. Alma-Ata is a region rich in fruits and vegetables. Collective farms surround the countryside, and many grow the fruit for which the city bears its name, Father of the Apples. Tamara Belasakova has endured many winters and seen many springs in the Father of the Apples. Many years ago, in the early 1960s, she endured the cold of Siberia until she and her husband were invited to move to Alma-Ata because he was a superb soccer player. About that time, Tamara had a son, Valery Yurovich. Valery grew up and played in this neighborhood where his mother still walks. Like most people who live in Alma-Ata, Tamara and her family climb the stairs to a small 3-room apartment which they rent. But the flight up these stairs is more difficult now. Her son Valery no longer lives here. He was killed fighting in Afghanistan. Valery was 18 years old when he was recruited into the airborne in 1978. As a youngster, he was not the tomboy his little sister was. Valery was very serious about life and about school, where he received excellent marks. Valery was killed when his plane was shot down taking off from Kabul. That same day, Tamara dreamed that the ceiling over Valery's bed caved in and killed him.
The ceiling collapsed. That is the bad sign. I didn't tell my family about that dream, because I feared it would come true. I saw this dream the day he died, on the 25th of December.
Tamara was never told that her son was transferred to Afghanistan, and many of Valery's friends who carried his coffin weren't even old enough to join the army.
If it depended on me, I would stop them from going to war. We brought them up for ourselves. We cherish the vision that nobody will die. My father perished during the Great Patriotic War, and my son perished during that war in Afghanistan. But we must live and be happy. We got used to go to his grave, just to say, "How are you, Sonny?" We would clean the place, make it tidy. It's a tragedy. He was so young, he had a right to be happy. He started at school and didn't know life at all. He would be 28 now. He could have children. I could be with my grandchildren now.
Tamara Baleshikova knows the other mothers of Alma-Ata who have lost their sons to the war. She meets them often at this cemetery outside of town. On this December day, veterans of Vietnam and Afghanistan walked with them to share their grief. It was more than just a walk for Greg Burham.
It was clear to me that the Afghansi and the mothers wanted us to come to the cemetery. It was also real clear to me that we were going to the cemetery.
No matter what.
No matter what. And that felt real good.
Surrounding each grave are fences a foot high. Engraved on each tombstone are faces you didn't forget. For young soldiers like Valery Baleshikova, who was killed in the early years of the war, how and where he died was not authorized to be engraved. This woman weeps for her son Dima, who dominates her dreams. "I keep waiting for him," she cries. "I know he's going to come home and tell me he's alive." Jack Lyon knows he's not.
It's almost unfathomable to me what it would be like to have your flesh and blood taken at the age of 18, never to come back. I mean, that kind of pain is so pure and so universal that I think that's a very, very powerful force that I don't think we've tapped yet towards helping all the countries come to a point where there's no more war.
The message of the mothers wasn't difficult to understand, but wasn't easy for interpreters like Marianne Clark, who translated the tears.
She's asking why I'm crying so much. She says, "You're young. You must have nerves too." You know, they always tell us that Americans have stronger nerves. But I guess not. I guess we're all the same. Figure that if there's a border between you, that must mean you're somehow different, but you can see that you're not really any different. We're going to know that now. We're all people. We're all the same. He says, we have a lot of pain. You've probably never known that kind of pain. And I said, no. And she says, God forbid that you ever should. Don't let that ever happen again. Don't let it happen to you, to anybody you know, or to anybody at all. Shouldn't happen to anybody.
Well, deep in the dark forest filled with rain, beyond the strip of Maryland pines, there's a river without a name. In the cold black water, Johnson man here stands. He stares across to the lights of the city and dreams of where he's been. Oh, mama, 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 come quick. I got the shakes and I'm gonna be sick. Throw your arms around me in the cold dark night. Hey now, mama, don't shut out the light. Don't you 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 shut out the light.
For the sons who live, they must survive their own feelings of loss in a language only they can speak, an advantage for Afghanistan that Vietnam veterans initially did not have.
У нас чуть по-другому.
It's a little bit different with us.
Мы так как возвращались с партиями целыми большими.
Because we used to return in big parties, in big groups.
Группами, и у нас оставались тесные взаимоотношения.
We remained close friends.
Хотя в первое время все разъезжались.
Although, of course, at first, everyone were going to their own places.
Но все равно близкого контакта с другими людьми очень тяжело найти.
And still, we were close to each other, but not very close to other people.
Yes.
Какое-то чувство недоверия, недопонимания.
There was some feeling, strange feeling of mistrust, and the feeling that the people, as if people could not understand you completely. Even the former friends.
Yes.
Да.
И поэтому рано или поздно потом снова возвращаешься к тем ребятам, с
And so,
которыми отслужил.
sooner or later, you return to your friends with whom you had served.
И ты себя чувствуешь с ними как-то спокойно.
And you feel at ease with them.
Our Afghanistan brothers are close comrades. This we discovered at a feast in the foothills of Alma-Ata. As some soldiers sang songs of love, life, and laughter, other servicemen cooked in the kitchen and barbecued the beef they enjoyed with bread, fruit, and friendship.
По возвращению из Афганистана
When returning from Afghanistan,
я вернулся после тяжелого ранения домой, в общем.
I came wounded.
Я
I was severely wounded.
2 года
Badly wounded.
был в одиночестве.
For 2 years, I was lonely.
Не хотел ни с кем встречаться.
I didn't want to see anyone.
Пил много.
I used to drink a lot.
В один момент даже тоже хотел с собой покончить.
And at some point, I thought of committing suicide.
Но в этот тяжелый для меня момент
But at that moment, very difficult for me,
ко мне пришли ребята,
my friends came to me.
которые меня нашли и подняли на ноги.
My friends who found me at last, and actually they returned me back to life.
That's good, yeah.
Замечательно.
Сейчас я живу общением с ними.
Now I live only by thanks to communication with them.
Не проходит ни одного дня, чтобы я
There
не
isn't a
встретился с
single
кем-нибудь.
day when I meet them practically every day.
Yes.
Это потому, что они смотрят на мир так же, как я.
It's because they see the world the way I do.
Они все это прочувствовали.
They have lived through it.
Я думаю, что мы с вами нашли
And I think
очень быстро общий язык,
we found the common language
потому что мы понимаем друг друга.
because we understand each other.
Мы понимаем, мы смотрим на войну, на мир одними глазами.
We see the war and the life with the same eyes.
Пойдем. Да, пойдем. Да, давай, что ты? Пойдем.
As much as they relate to each other, Alma-Ata Afghansty, like Sergei Kondratyev, also rely on their families for strength and for support.
It was my family and my wife who went a long way towards my readjustment.
Придя с армии 2 года.
It's very difficult for me to live in the family right after the military because I reacted very tensely to every sharp movement of sound in the family. And my family was on the verge of breakup.
Я постоянно себя отдергивал. Я понимал, что я не прав. Я понимал, но я ничего не мог с собой сделать.
I also had to control myself, but still I couldn't help doing that.
Эта реакция, я не знаю, откуда она у меня взялась.
I couldn't understand why I reacted so aggressively at my wife's laughter. Even every time she laughed, it made me feel I was going to kill her.
Я знаю, что ей было больно от меня, но она понимала меня.
I know she suffered a lot from me, but I understood her.
Наверное, благодаря ей, что
And she always wanted to calm me down.
уравновесился, вошел в колею, вошел в нормальную жизнь.
It's basically owing to my wife that I got readjusted and that I am the way I am now.
Я боготворю ее за то, что она это смогла сделать.
And I pray to her because she could do this.
Может быть, другая любая женщина, которая была бы моей женой, может быть, плюнула на меня и сказала, что я не буду с тобой жить.
Any other woman, had she been my wife, she might have spat on me and said, I'm no longer going to live with you. But she could go through that. My wife,
Ну, молодец она, одним словом, молодец. Все зависит от нее.
She's a good girl, my wife.
If the soul of the Soviet Union is fellowship, then the heart is family. Despite singing slightly out of tune, it was here we finally found harmony, in Alma-Ata, high in the Tan Shan Mountains of Central Asia, very close to home. These are young Soviet students who change their uniforms to change the guard every hour at the 28 Guardsman Park in central Alma-Ata. Their long steps take them back into a time when warriors were worshipped and revered. They stand watch over an eternal flame which burns for the sacrifice of Soviet soldiers. But even generals, honored for their heroism in World War II, will tell you the flame that glows for the great patriotic war burns less brightly for their sons in Afghanistan.
Our children are unlucky in Afghanistan. They're miserable there.
Они защищают не святое дело.
They do not defend their own land there. It's not a sacred thing.
This sacred memorial was dedicated to the 28 Guardsmen who defended Moscow and the motherland from the terror of Nazi tanks. Russia will not forget her great patriotic war, nor the millions of her men who died fighting Germany. Vasily, another veteran of that war, feels that Afghanistan is his country's Vietnam,
There was a time when the Americans didn't know how to escape from Vietnam, to go away.
Я знаю, что Вьетнамская война была непопулярна в США.
I know that the Vietnam War was not popular in the United States of America.
Война в Афганистане
The war in Afghanistan
тоже не особенно популярна в нашей стране.
is not so popular in our country too.
Мы считаем, что это была ошибка нашего правительства.
We think that this was the mistake of our government.
Поэтому в военном смысле, мне кажется, это одно и то же, что Вьетнам, что Афганистан.
So he thinks that this is one and the same thing, Vietnam War and Afghanistan War.
Veterans of Vietnam and Afghanistan know their wars and their scars are similar. We felt it one cold winter's morning as we marched together to a monument recently dedicated by the Afghansti to their fallen brothers. It is here, in this park in Moscow, where international duty is not only being defended, but it's also being remembered.
When I am feeling guilty,
Когда я чувствовал себя виноватым,
it's my ego, that I somehow should have been able to do more than I did.
когда мне казалось, что мне надо было сделать больше, чем я мог бы делать на самом деле.
And that, to me, I was a lieutenant.
Я был лейтенантом.
And I lost people
Я терял людей,
that were in my
которые были
command. And that is the very hardest thing for me to deal with of everything.
Это самое тяжелое было.
I mean, harder than killing other people, harder than anything.
Тяжелее всего, тяжелее, чем убить другого человека, тяжелее, чем что-либо другое.
Is to feel responsible for them.
Чувствовать ответственность за них.
And what helps me
Мне помогает то,
is to give meaning to their life and to their sacrifice
придать значение их жизни и их жертве.
by trying to stop war, by working for peace.
Тем, что сейчас я пытаюсь остановить войну и борюсь за мир.
If what we can say for the boys that died in Afghanistan
Мальчики, которые убиты в Афганистане,
is that they died in the last war.
единственное, что мы можем сказать, что эти ребята умерли. Единственное, что мы смогли бы сказать, это то, что эти ребята умерли в последней войне.
That will give meaning to their sacrifice.
И тогда это сделает их жертву значимой.
That's my feeling.
Вот это мое чувство.
Oleg Vienny, at just 22, understands the meaning of sacrifice and the significance of our subdued salute to his brothers in the winter snow. But it will be somewhere in the spring before Oleg will be able to make the long walk to the Afghanistan Memorial. Oleg lost his left leg when he stepped on a landmine a month before he was to come home. But he takes it all in stride.
I don't think I had to cope with it. I think I feel the same as I felt before and behave the same way I behaved before.
For now, Oleg's home is Burdenko Military Hospital. It is here where the scars of Afghanistan challenge Soviet surgeons to keep pace with prosthetic procedures so that these veterans can walk again. But walking away from Burdenko back into society will be difficult. Mother Russia, already crippled by war, doesn't like to be reminded of her misstep. Oleg is bitter that he was wounded towards the very end of his service, but he's not sorry.
But in a way, I think I even can be thankful to Afghanistan because I've lived through very many things and I understood very many things.
Вот, и то есть быстрее узнаешь человека по опыту, потому что там приобрел.
When I saw people in extreme situations, and I learned how to understand people, how to come to understand a person at once, how to see what a person really is. And it's much easier now for me to learn about people, what they really are.
Armed with his positive perspective, Oleg hopes to eventually overcome the wounds of his war, and with patience, the wounds of our wars.
But you can do something only when you communicate with people, when you communicate with people all the time. And then it's not a very good surrounding at the hospital for communicating. I think that a good communication can be in the street, in a cafe, at a cup of coffee, to go together to the cinema, to the theater, to stay at somebody's home, to talk there about life, about things that are going around, about each other's experience in Vietnam, in Afghanistan. This is communication. And then it will bring some result.
Oleg Vianney, at just 22, will take it one step at a time.
И тогда вопрос разоружения.
Viktor Nosatov is marching off to a new war. He is battling for a future without weapons. In his other war, Viktor once armed a tank for the Soviet struggle in Afghanistan. Today in Alma-Ata, Viktor struggles for disarmament.
I think that the result of our meeting is going to be an appeal to the head of our government,
Советского Союза и Соединенных Штатов Америки,
both of the Soviet Union and of the United States,
ко всем странам мира,
and to those of all the countries of the world,
с призывом бороться за полное разоружение.
with a call to struggle for complete disarmament. It's difficult for any one person to struggle.
Но когда будут бороться во всем мире,
But when the whole world starts struggling for it,
я думаю, правительство и правители начнут к мнению народа прислушиваться.
I think governments and the people in governments are going to start listening to the opinion of the people in the world.
This is the world of Afanasy Derendiev. His son Sasha was 28 when he was killed in 1981. Afanasy was told that Sasha was helping to build schools and to lay roads in Afghanistan. Sasha's coffin arrived at night. The early years of the war rarely saw the light of day in Alma-Ata.
It's a terrible, tremendous loss, because I lost not only the son, I lost the future children. Although he had 2 children, but he may have had more children. So 2 orphans remained, a young wife who became a widow at the age of 25.
Сколько бы они хорошего сделали.
They could have done so much, so good things, so many good things.
For the surviving sons of Afghanistan and Vietnam, their wars are not over. But now, vets like Baikal Khamzin and Greg Burham are fighting together, side by side, in a battle for survival. Brothers in arms that hold a key to our future, recognized by their past and their presence.
Первый хочешь начать?
По его улыбке и по глазам.
By his eyes and by his smile.
Я просто внутренне почувствовал внутренний голос.
I felt in a voice say.
Я не знаю, это нельзя словами объяснить.
You can't even describe it in words.
Что с этим человеком.
It was just an inner voice say that
Такое состояние,
we
что
have
с
something in
которым
common
я
with this man,
поговорить и есть о чем поговорить
that
и рассказать.
we have very
Я не
many
знаю, такое
things to
чувство
share,
сразу, что он человек без задних мыслей, что у
that
него написано на лице
everything,
его
all
чувства.
his feelings
Поэтому
are on
я
his
как-то с ним
face,
сразу
can be read in his face. And that's why it seems to me that he would be an easy person to deal with.
Честное такое лицо у него было.
A very honest face, very sincere face he's got. A man who has been in the war has completely different eyes.
И манера поведения,
And the manner of
совсем
behavior
другая.
in
Даже
life
вот
is completely
идешь по
different
улице,
too. Even when you walk in the street
в автобусе,
or in the bus,
ну, в любом месте,
anywhere,
на человека посмотришь,
if
на
you
его
look at a
глаза,
person,
то ты сразу
if you look in his eyes,
можешь определить,
you can tell
что он служил ли
that
именно в
whether
Афганистане, или
he's
вот у нас
been
вот
in
действительно
Afghanistan.
просто
It is the eyes of his daughter Alicia that keep Sergei Kondratiev looking for alternatives to wars like Afghanistan.
Очень помогает, потому что
Yes, it helps a lot.
смотря ей в глаза, смотря своей жене в глаза, смотря в глаза своей матери,
Looking at her eyes, looking at my wife's eyes, looking at the eyes of my mother.
смотря на своего ребенка,
When I look in their eyes, I'm really scared to think that another war is possible.
мне страшно представить, что если
I
может
want
быть
to leave myself, I want to leave my family, and I want the rest to leave. And I don't want any mother to receive telegrams about the death of their sons.
Zinaida Chivilyova received such a telegram in the spring of 1982. That's when her son Olejik was taken from her. Since then, she has worn nothing but black every day. She spends all her rubles on roses for Olejik's grave, which she visits every day. Olejik was no different than any other child, full of music and mischief. As a young boy, he set his sights on becoming a military man like his father Nikolai. Olejik attended military school before he became an officer in the Soviet infantry. The letters he sent home from Afghanistan via his homemade mailbox could not say anything about war. Olejik was killed when his caravan was attacked by Drushmani, the enemy, 7 days before his 23rd birthday on May 12th, the day his parents learned he died. His father Nikolai has never recovered. His mother, Zinaida, still tries to find blame.
Why are people so bad? Not the parents, but the government. How can they afford to send people to death?
But when I saw the one lady, Zinaida, so full of energy and so righteously angry, and turning that anger away from herself out towards the causes of her son's death, that was amazing to me.
For Jack Lyon and Zinaida Chivilyova, surrounded by the symbols of the 28 Guardsmen Park in Alma-Ata, it was the changing of the guard.
She started asking me questions about what I had ever talked to my mother about the war. And for example, she asked me, had I ever killed anybody? And that's a question. My mother is dead now, but I never discussed any of this with my mother. I came very clear and had to say to her that the reason I didn't have kids was because I didn't want to go through the pain she was going through.
Will this child of Alma-Ata someday watch over this flame as a young soldier? Will he someday live to face the fires of a Vietnam like Jack Lyon? Or will he someday fight the wars of an Afghanistan like Olejik Chivilyova and never return?
In the letter she got from his commander, the following thing was written, that the first bullet wounded him on the side and he fell down.
К нему бросился рядовой Мамадьяров.
His fellow tried to help him.
Но слишком тяжелые эти были несколько шагов до командира. Солдат упал, убитый в висок.
But the soldier was killed too.
Олег не стонал, помощи не просил, он продолжал командовать.
Oleg did not groan, he didn't ask for help, he continued to command.
Бандиты стреляли на его голос, это я из письма цитирую.
That's from the, she's quoting it from the letter, and the letter continues. The bandits continued to fire because they could hear his voice.
Он продолжал командовать. Бандиты стреляли на его голос и еще 4 ранили его.
So they continued to fire and they wounded him 4 times more.
Пока подошли основные силы, теперь я уже рассказываю, рассказ со слов рассказчика.
And that's what one of the fellows told her when the main forces came.
Там уже было много убитых.
They
Олег
were
еще
very
продолжал
many killed,
командовать.
and Oleg continued to command, to give orders.
К нему бросился его однокурсник.
One of his fellows tried
Под
to help
проливным
him
огнем. Они прям
under
под
fire,
проливным огнем, в общем, добрался
under
он до
constant
него,
fire.
сделал ему противошоковый
Got
укол.
him, he gave him an injection, anti-shock injection.
Противошоковый укол ему сделал, Олег застонал.
And Oleg started to groan then.
Его взяли на носилки и вынесли.
He was put on the stretchers and taken from under the
И
fire.
Саша рассказывал, что потом
And then
он
his
запрашивал,
fellow,
и он сам пошел в бой снова. Саша запрашивал, как Олежек. Его все звали Олежек.
and then this fellow who tried to save him
А там
continued to
стоял
participate in the
вертолет
battle.
медицинский.
But he continued to ask, how is Олежек?
И врач ответил, что Олежека больше нет.
And there was a helicopter there, a doctor's helicopter, and this fellow got an answer, Олежек is no longer alive.
Можно ли было спасти
And
его?
then I asked whether it was possible to save him at all.
Ответили нет. У него
And
была
I got the answer, no.
рана первой в печень,
That
вторая
was
в
a very
предсердие,
terrible wound, first in the liver, then the second one near the heart.
и руки, и ноги
And the arms and the legs were all wounded,
перебиты.
terribly wounded.
Но я согласна на любого.
But I'm agreed to, I would have taken him in any state.
У него умная голова была.
He was such a clever boy.
Я бы была у него нянькой, сиделкой, секретарем.
I would have been a very good nurse to him. I would have been a secretary. I would have been everything to him.
И он бы добился своего, только бы жил.
If only he could have been
Вы
alive.
знаете, как он мне нужен.
You know how much I need him. I need him so much.
These mist-covered mountains are home now for me. but my home is the lowlands, and always will be. Someday you'll return to your valleys and your farms, and you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms. Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle reached high, and though it didn't hurt me so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms.
Lessons that I came away with from them as a group and was the strength of the family, the strength, the okayness to be brothers and to rejoice together.
There's so many different worlds, so many different suns, and we have just one world, but we live in different ones.
I guess the primary thing I learned from the experience was the fact that we, in fact, are one people. Human beings are all the same. They hurt the same, they bleed the same, they want the same, they have the same fears and the same joy. You look at those fathers with their kids, or you look at those guys when they're together singing their little songs. Those are the same feelings we have.
Now the sun's gone to hell, the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the starlight, in every line in your palm. We're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
И что мы, советские люди,
We, the Soviet people,
им не враги.
we are not enemies to you.
Мы такие же люди, как и они.
We're the same people like you.
Я думаю, что у нас найдется очень много проблем.
I think we shall find very many problems,
Именно мировых даже проблем, можно сказать,
global problems,
которые мы можем совместно решать, прилагая все усилия
which we'll be able to solve together, doing our best,
на все те средства, которые идут на вооружение, на войну.
using all that money that had been used on arms.
Если эти, вот одна мать очень хорошо сказала,
One
на
mother
кладбище,
said at the cemetery,
если бы все те снаряды, все те бомбы, которые взорвались на войне, были бы направлены в помощь
if
детям,
all
в
the
помощь
money
людям, то
used
это бы
on
мы
the
сделали бы
shells,
гораздо
on the
больше
bullets,
для людей, чем
had been
войной,
used on
решая
children,
вопросы,
on health,
чтобы больше не
on
было
peace.
конфликтов региональных.
It would have been much better. It would have freed our planet from conflicts.
Я думаю, что афганские ветераны,
And I think that the vets
Хотел
from
бы
Afghanistan,
хотел бы думать, что
I would like
они
to think
будут последними ветеранами,
that
которые узнали
the
войну.
veterans from Afghanistan would be the last veterans who ever seen the war.
И пожелать им большого-большого счастья, чтобы
And I would like to wish you
у них было безоблачное,
happiness.
голубое
I would like to
небо.
wish you clear blue
Над головой.
sky over your heads.
Спасибо за внимание.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Я уже научился.